If you guys didn't tune in to Nvidia's live stream revealing the new RTX 3000 series, I'm sure you've seen plenty of videos covering that topic. So you get the 3070, the 3080, and the 3090. But before we get to the graphics cards, Nvidia had some really nice announcements surrounding their software side of things. First off, with Nvidia Reflex. So that's supposed to lower overall system latency by almost half, I believe, dropping potential system latency from like 30 milliseconds down to maybe 15 or 20 milliseconds, which is a huge advantage in competitive shooters like Valorant or Call of Duty Warzone, where the split second really does matter. So they did a small example using Valorant where you have the doorways on one of the maps. You get around 180 milliseconds while that character is in between those doorways. The human response is around 150 milliseconds, which leaves you with 30 milliseconds to actually be able to depend on your system to either shoot that character or not. So if you can drop that overall system latency from that 30 millisecond mark down to 15 or 20, that is a big plus. They also announced, which they've recently announced, RTX Voice, which is supposed to be sort of that noise cancellation feature, but they've now announced Nvidia Broadcast, which sort of allows you to stream like you have some really high-end equipment without actually having that high-end equipment. You can completely blur out the background. You can even do a green screen effect just using AI and their software algorithm to get rid of your background and just sort of have you over your game or you on another background. It's a really nice option for free because you just get it with any of the RTX cards. So a really cool piece of software there. So those were the main software pieces that I took from the announcement, but getting into the graphics cards. So let's first stop by the 3090 really quick. I doubt many of us are spending $1,500 on a BF GPU, as Nvidia self-proclaimed it, but it is a huge card, a triple slot card, extremely bulky, extremely big, but that is as expected. 24 gigs of VRAM, GDDR6X, a 10,500 CUDA core GPU, an insane amount of capabilities within that GPU. The teraflops, all giant numbers, no real point in going through that, but you're going to be able to game at insane, both FPS and resolution, capable of playing a bunch of titles at 8K 60 FPS. So that is just insanity. But like I said, a $1,500 price point for that card, which is honestly not a bad deal when you're coming from like a Titan RTX where the price was almost $2,500. So they've actually dropped the price on sort of their top tier graphics card by quite a bit. And now we get into sort of the sweet spot, the 3080, the 3070, coming in at the exact same price as their predecessors with the 2080 and the 2070. So $699 for the 3080, $499 for the 3070, and insane performance results for those cards as well. But let's start off with the specs. So the 3080 comes in at around 8,700 CUDA cores and 10 gigs of GDDR6X VRAM. So really nice improvements in both of those numbers, and it correlates in terms of game performance. So they're saying that it's twice the performance as the 2080, even superseding the 2080 Ti, which was a $1,300 card at launch, for $700. So insane performance gains from Nvidia while keeping price the same. So your price to performance ratio has increased tremendously with these cards. And it's sort of targeted at that 4K 60 FPS gamer. But in terms of my perspective, it's really for like that 1440p 144 hertz gamer or that 1440p 240 FPS gamer. So a great upgrade with the 3080. And then the 3070 coming in at $500 and still outpacing the likes of the 2080 Ti, beating out the 2070 Super by almost double the performance there as well. So this card now comes with around 6,000 CUDA cores and 8 gigs of GDDR6. So not the GDDR6X that's found on the 3080 and 3090. A lot faster memory on those cards, but still plenty to get a bunch of performance out of the new Ampere architecture that these 3000 series cards are based on. So these cards are insane performance deals for the money, and I'm definitely looking forward to when these cards launch. The 3080 coming out on September 17th, and the 3070 some point in October. And the cooler design on the 3080 and the 3070 are both really sleek, really cool looking. The 3080 sort of brings that half PCB design with the back fan being able to pull air through the entire fin stack, the entire card, and then exhaust hot air up and out the top and the back of the case. A really nice looking card from that perspective. They also introduced the 12-pin power connector, which will take two 8-pins from your power supply and turn into a single 12-pin for the GPU. And they also rated both these cards at requiring 750 watt power supplies. So just make sure that you have a system capable of both of these cards. And the 3070 takes the design a step down from the 3080 with sort of your typical dual fan design, just both fans on the single side pushing air onto the heatsink, but both really, really good looking cards that like sort of brushed aluminum finish with like the black aluminum heatsink. Both look really, really cool. An insane amount of performance for the price. But what really interests me is what comes after the 3080, 3070 launch. When do we get that sort of budget level card that competes with maybe the 2060 or the 1660? What comes next? Nvidia in the last generation sort of released that 2060 a couple months after the launch of the 2080 and the 2070, and then the 1660 and the 1650, that 16 series really came along probably almost a half a year later. So what should we expect when Nvidia launches those next level cards? Really, what I'm thinking, what I've seen online, is the possibility that they take the TU106 die from the RTX 2060 and 2070 and then just turn that into that next generation of budget 16 series cards, whatever it ends up being called within the Nvidia lineup. But still, that should be insane performance gains, similar to what we're seeing with the 3080 and 3070 over their predecessors. If we can bring RTX to the budget minded gamer, as well as bring probably, if not more than double the performance of a 1660 or a 1660 Super or a 1650, depending on the price. But that's really where Nvidia competes with AMD, is that budget sector. In terms of the high price cards like the 3070, 3080, there's not too much coming from AMD until we get Navi 2, which should be again later this year. But what happens in that budget sector? Of course, we're just gonna have to wait and see. But if we do get some cards that are rivaling 2060, 2070 level performance at a 1660 price point, that would be amazing. Those would be some fantastic deals and definitely worth the upgrade if you're gaming on like maybe a 1050, a 1030, maybe even an older series card like a 970. Definitely worth the upgrade for maybe if it's a $250 to $300 price point, or even like a $150 to $250 price point for the even lower end card. So only time will tell if and when we get those cards, but hopefully it's soon. Hopefully it allows the budget-minded gamer to be able to upgrade their system, get into a much higher performing card, maybe to upgrade to a 1080p 144 FPS setup or 120 FPS setup. Then you might need that extra boost from one of those cards. And if we can get a budget-based card for $200, $250 that has RTX 2060 level performance, that would be an amazing deal for those gamers. So only time will tell what we get from Nvidia. Hopefully it's sometime soon in the next few months or so. Hopefully not too late into 2021, but really, really, really looking forward to those cards. And it might be what triggers you to maybe upgrade a slightly more budget system like the $500 to $1,000 system with one of those cards. But let me know below in the comments if you're looking to buy a 3070 or a 3080, or maybe you're waiting to see what Nvidia launches later either this year or maybe early next year with a more budget mindset card, or even if you're waiting for Navi 2 from AMD to see what kind of performance AMD is now bringing to the table. They've sort of stepped up their game extremely in regards to the CPU space, really beating out Intel. So what do they do in the GPU space with Nvidia? And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you guys aren't already subscribed to the channel, definitely hit that subscribe button. We'll try to get as much content as we can surrounding the 3080 and 3070 releases, and definitely putting one of those cards into my gaming rig. So be sure to stay tuned.